دایی یه فرصت خوب حالا پشت مدافعان خداداد عزیزی توی دروازه گل برای ایران خداداد عزیزی باز هم روی زمین گشت سردار آزمون و توی دروازه سردار آزمون گل به نام آزمون و برای ایران بزنه کریم انصاری گل توی دروازه کریم انصاری دروازه پرتغال باز شد علی دایی صاحب توپ توی دروازه
گل اشتباه حرکت از بوچان نژاد فرصت برای بوچان نژاد توی دروازه گل برای ایران.
Hello to all of the Gold Bezan listeners. Welcome to a new podcast today on Gold Bezan. It is your new host, Shauyan here, doing my first podcast as the new host of Gold Bezan. I hope you guys enjoy my work here for them, and I really appreciate the team. So today, kind of itinerary of what we're going to be talking about is I'm joined as panelists by Arya and Pezhman, and we're going to be breaking down from the countries of Portugal, Belgium, Turkey and France, talking about some of the players that are playing domestically in those countries. And we're going to be talking to the journalists Tom Kundert from Portugal, Maxime Jacques from Belgium, Burcu Eken from Turkey. And you guys will be hearing those interviews from each of the panelists, the people that were speaking to them in those interviews. And yeah, that's basically it.
Glad to be back on, Shauyan. Hopefully we can speak about the players that are playing in Europe and have a good podcast.
I'm sure you will do a great job hosting this round. Well done.
Thank you. You can tell that I can just hear all the amazing confidence Arya and Pezhman have in me in this new episode. So the first interview we'll be letting you guys listen to is the one that was from Portugal by Tom Kundert, and Pezhman was the one that spoke to him about the players, the Iranian players that are playing domestically in Portugal.
یه فرصت خوب داره ساخته میشه. مهدی با این تو چه میکنه؟ مهدی طارمی توی دروازه. حالا محمدی ببینیم چی کار میکنه و اینم گل چهارم.
Hi, this is Pezhman Pars from Bezan, and with us we have Tom Kundert of Portugal.net, a well-known journalist living in Lisbon, Portugal, and writes a lot of the Portuguese football. Hi Tom, how are you doing?
Hi there, Vishnu. Yeah, I'm fine, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
Could you just talk shortly about your story with Portugal and what you do both on social media and how you started?
Yeah, sure. Well, when I first came to Portugal in 1994, it was a completely different time in terms of football journalism. There wasn't much English language information about Portuguese football. So, and then the internet, was just kind of starting to kind of permeate through all parts of society. So I decided to start up what started off as a blog, which turned into a website, and which turned into something quite bigger with lots of collaborators just talking about Portuguese football.
Now in Portugal, we have 3 Iranians playing in that league. We have Mehdi Taremi in Rio Ave, we had Amir Abedzadeh, the goalkeeper in Maritimo, and we have Mehrdad Mohammadi in Aves. Could you just shortly tell us how have these 3 clubs done this season compared to maybe what they thought they will end up before the season?
Yeah, okay. Well, 3 very contrasting fortunes with the 3 clubs. I think you could say the one thing which linked them is the fact that the 3 Iranian players you mentioned have all done really well at the clubs. But as for the clubs themselves, Rio Ave had a fantastic season. They're one of the better teams in Portugal. They're not in Portugal. I'm sure you've got the big 3, Benfica, Sporting and Porto, and they're just way ahead of everyone else. Then you've got a series of clubs who normally are fighting it out to get towards the top end of the table or to fight for Europe, and Rio Ave recently have been in that group, but they had an excellent season even by their standards. They got actually a record amount of points this season. They qualified for the Europa League, and basically they played some lovely football, and their fans were absolutely delighted. And I think football fans in general in Portugal really enjoyed watching them. As for Maritimo, they had a slightly disappointing season, I'd say. They're normally in the top half of the league, although they've fallen away a little bit over recent years. But this season, they had a bit of a traumatic season, really. They had a brush with relegation for much of it, ended up having a strong end to the season, and in the end, survived quite comfortably. Avs, unfortunately, were one of the stories of the season in Portugal for all the wrong reasons, because they've had terrible financial problems. The club's owners, they're actually owned by a Chinese businessman, and that's gone terribly wrong. And they've had all sorts of financial problems. Most of the players haven't been paid.
Could you please tell us what happened with this Chinese owner?
Yeah, well, it's basically a question of mismanagement. We're not quite sure of his motivations for buying the club in the first place, and basically the players haven't been paid for. Really, the problem started emerging at Christmas time or the start of the year, and they went for weeks without getting paid. Things just got worse and worse, and there was actually a possibility at the end of the season that they would forfeit their last 2 games, which would have been, firstly, absolutely terrible for the image of Portuguese football, and secondly, absolutely disastrous for the club itself, because if that happened, the rules state that they would be banned from professional sports for, I think, 5 years or 10 years. So it might have even, brought an end to the club. So, and they understandably, they were bottom of the table. The players actually were the only representatives of the clubs who showed dignity, really. They managed to, carry on playing until the end of the season. And Mohammadi actually impressed people quite a lot, even despite that background.
This is quite interesting, We like to also hear about Amir Abedzadeh. He had been like a dual fight with Charles with the goalkeeping situation. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, he's a good goalkeeper, Charles, at Marítimo. Brazilian. He was ever since Amir's been here, which is 3 seasons now. They've been having, I'd say, healthy competition for that number 1 jersey. Most of the time, it has been Amir who's been the number 1 goalkeeper, and even this season, I think he actually started off on the substitutes bench, first 5 games or so, but then he got back in the team, and he's been pretty much ever present since. And he actually played a very important role towards the end of the season, because I was telling you that Marítimo, they were in a disappointing situation. Really, they were having a bit of a brush with relegation, and then towards the end of the season, they had a fantastic run, and completely in the end, they finished well clear of relegation. And Amir came in, and in a very high-profile match against Benfica, he had an absolute stormer, played superbly. They won that match 2-0. But Benfica, for the first half hour or so, they were dominating the match, and Amir made 3 or 4 stunning saves. Ended up helping Marítimo win that match. And then from that moment onwards, of course, Amir stayed as the number 1 choice. And I think they went on a run of just conceding 1 goal in 5 or 6 games. Just this last game of the season was a bit of a crazy game, a 3-3 draw. But before that, they were just, really strong at the back, and he played a big role in it. So yeah, he's a good goalkeeper, a good quality goalkeeper. We actually had the opportunity to interview him on Portugal January or February time. He gave a really nice interview, and it's very interesting, some of the things he said. He said, how much he likes Madeira, what a beautiful island it was, the lifestyle over there, very friendly people, delicious food. He even said that when he finishes playing professional football, he'd seriously consider making it his home. So, he really does seem very well settled.
Yeah, interesting, and also really interesting about this competition between Charles, because as you said, he's a decent goalkeeper as well. Now, just as you mentioned, Aves, they get relegated, and the players were basically the ones that helped the team actually survive. But let us talk about, as you said, Rio with an amazing number of points they got this season. How much is that due to Taremi's goal scoring? Of course, 18 goals means a lot, but how was it? How is it the discussion in the Portuguese media about Taremi's impact on the team and in the Portuguese league, of course?
Yeah, it's been fantastic. No two ways about it. Really, really positive. There was a lot of interest when he came because, as you know, it's very unusual for Iranian players to come to Portugal. And of course, that Amir, when he came, he was, I think, is one of the first ever, maybe. But Taremi, he came with a good record in Iran, and I think is it the United Arab Emirates or Qatar, I think, and at international level as well. So people were very curious, but I don't think anyone really expected him to do this well. Perhaps I say anyone apart from the coach, Carlos Carvalhal, because he knew immediately that he had quite a special player on his hands, and he actually scored a hat-trick in his first start. And I remember very clearly the press conference after the game when Carlos Carvalhal said, with all due respect to Portuguese football and to Rio Ave, Mehdi Taremi is a player who should be on a bigger stage. And to be perfectly honest, everything he's done this season has backed up that quote, because he's really looked a class act. Like I said, he scored a hat-trick on that first day. He ended up with 18 goals in the season. He was actually set to be crowned to get the trophy as the top scorer until 2 minutes from the end of the final match. Benfica's striker Vinicius scored, and so he finished joint levels on 18 goals, but Vinicius got the trophy because he played less minutes. But fantastic achievement really by Taremi, settling so well. I think there's no doubt about it. He'll probably be taking a step up to a bigger club.
You were bringing the subject here about maybe he playing for Porto or Benfica, because these clubs, and of course Porto may be one of the best clubs in entire Europe to get good players for a good price and sell them maybe even more expensive than they've done for the last 10 years or something. Could you see Taremi be one of those players, or is he too expensive for Porto to try to make some kind of financial move to get him for the next season?
Yeah, it is a possibility. You can't rule it out, because I suppose the only thing which may make his price a little bit more affordable is he's not so young, is he? A young player obviously has a lot more value just simply because you get more chance of a sell-on value, whereas Taremi, I think, is 28
and a
now.
non-EU player as well. So.
Yeah, that's right. But normally I would normally say yes. Normally that would be kind of a natural progression in Portugal. If you do very well for the lesser clubs, then that usually signifies you've got a good chance of a step up to one of the big clubs, Benfica or Porto Sporting. The problem in Portugal at the moment is that, well, especially for Porto, they've been in terrible financial trouble. I mean, his stats, 21 goals from 37 starts, in his first season in Europe. That's really good going.
Now that this team has been relegated, do you see, or can you see Mohammadi playing in another Portuguese club? And if so, what kind of team do you think he will manage to score 8-10 more goals again next season?
Yeah, possibly. I think there's a good possibility of that, because, like you said, like I was just mentioning before, it's been a disaster of a season for the club. They've, apart from all these financial problems, or I suppose because of a lot of these financial problems, there's a really bad atmosphere. There must have been around the club, and they finished rock bottom. They were relegated a long way before the end of the season. But he did well. He scored 8. He was their top scorer. He was our top scorer. He scored 8 goals, which may not sound that much, but the whole team, in the season scored 24 goals. So he scored 1/3, 33% of their goals. So that's quite something, really, again, for a player, turning up from a different continent and his first season, having to settle, having to get used to different football, having to get used to, different language, different food, different culture. And you have to say he did very well.
Finally, a quick question in the end here, Tom. With the Iranian success in Portugal, that we must say after this season, do you think that the rest of the Portuguese clubs are eyeing on Iran and Iranian players due to their success now? Will we maybe see a lot more Iranian players in Portugal the years to come?
Well, it certainly won't do any harm, will it? That's right. Like I say, only 3 players from Iran this season, and all of them have been very, very impressive. Of course, I think we have to say there must be a bit of an influence from Carlos Queiroz. I know Taremi himself, he spoke about this. He said the reason he came to Portugal was because Carlos Queiroz recommended the country as, a good kind of first base from someone coming from Asia. It's the football's not perhaps quite so high pressure as in some of the other European countries. Good start, good lifestyle, and perhaps a little easier to kind of break into European football than going straight to, for instance, England or Germany or Italy or Spain, or somewhere like that. So yeah, but I'm sure you're right. If you're looking at it from both points of view, the Portuguese clubs, they've got examples there, 3 Iranian players. All of them have been big assets to their clubs. Players who have done well and who I think any team would like to have in their squad. And also, I suppose, from the point of view of Iranian footballers themselves and Iranian agents, they can see that if they manage to get an Iranian player to sign on for a Portuguese club, they can make a bit of a name for themselves and hopefully progress in their careers. So, yeah, I think that's a strong possibility.
Great. Well, thank you, Tom Kundert from Portugal. Really good journalist in Portugal, covering the Portuguese football all in all for us non-Portuguese speaking fans. Once again, let's hope that we will have more time to chat with you about Iranian players, and maybe next time even Taremi or somebody else actually wins the Golden Boots.
Yeah, sure. Okay, good talking to you. Thank you very much.
Too.
So I'm going to be first. We're going to talk to our first panelist, Arya, talking about the players that are playing in Portugal: Amir Abedzadeh, Mehdi Taremi, and Mehrdad Mohammadi, who all are playing in Portugal right now. Arya, what are kind of your thoughts of what was spoken about in that interview and about these players?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, first of all, Tom was brilliant in giving us an insight into Portuguese football. He's such a knowledgeable guy. But when it comes to the season Taremi had, very very rightly, as he was pointing out, he has, he will have good offers this summer. He will most likely leave. Obviously, Carvalhal, the coach of Rio Ave, left that club, and I'm sure Taremi would like to go to a club where he's getting coached by a top level coach. Ideally for him, if he stays in Portugal, he's already had experience playing in that league. He scored 21 goals this season in all competitions. It would be great for him to stay there. If he does move abroad, which I don't think is very likely, although Tom was alluding to the fact that it could be likely that he could move abroad. Again, it would be a thing he'll need to get used to the league. So obviously that's something that he might have to consider. But he has been having offers from Porto, Benfica, and all these kind of big clubs in Portugal. So if he does end up going to those clubs, then fantastic. Abedzadeh, had a brilliant season as well. I think it was 10 clean sheets. Fantastic. I'll let Pezhman speak about that in a minute. But Mehrdad Mohammadi for me was the star of the season. For me, out of all the players who went to Europe, have been going to Europe from the Iranian league, I've never seen a guy have such an impact for a team that's not very good, like Av, who got relegated, and he managed to score something like 8 goals, having like almost 8 assists. He had a brilliant season, and he wasn't much of a player for Sepahan in the Persian Gulf Pro League. So he came out of that league and he showed that he can be a top player, and obviously now he's in contention for a call up for the national team. So no, I'm really impressed with him.
Well, just as the interview we heard, and also what Arya mentioned, Mehrdad Mohammadi, the biggest surprise here. But for me, I'm still kind of in shock that Mehdi Taremi was able to be such a good player during the entire season. I mean, it's a really big step moving from the Qatari league to one of the best leagues in Europe in a club that's not among the top three in Portugal that usually have, all the money, all the power, or the resources to make such a big impact and to be such a valid player. I mean, I was super impressed that he was actually a better kind of goal scorer and player in Portugal than he would have ever been in both Iran and Qatar. So, and he's been criticized a lot from Iranian media and also from us in Goal Bezan that he seemed to be lacking some sort of, let us say, maturity or morale or something that doesn't take him to the next step. But I think he proved everybody, including me, wrong this season by being such a class act on the pitch. And off the pitch, I mean, he's been kind of, the humble guy and talking about the team and just, thanking his teammates for the goals and not being maybe the douchebag that he could have turned out to if he would stay in the Middle East and being the superstar in, to be honest, crappy leagues. So Mehdi Taremi, if he stays in Rio Ave, it will be probably just until the next window opens sometime in the new year, and hopefully he will continue to score and make a big impact and leave Portugal. But we have this problem with he's an Iranian citizen, so it makes it much more difficult for clubs to get a player that doesn't have that doesn't come from the EU countries. So he have to fight for a spot with a lot of African players and a lot of South American players. And as we all know, those countries from those regions are much more established in Europe than Iranian players that just in the recent years have started to shine and make a big impact. So buying Taremi is a little bit of a risk for a European club still, but it would be super stupid of a big team not to buy the number one goal scorer in Portugal, although he scored as many goals as Pizzi or whatever his name was, but had like less assists or something like that. Taremi, the main guy here, he deserves something better in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree with Arya and Pezhman. Right now, like the Iranian national team players that are playing in Portugal are showing quite well how well they can play and not bouncing back, but I guess bouncing back could be the right word, showing that they can play on the big stage in big European countries. And so hopefully we see them prosper and come, as Pezhman said, come maybe a season into the next window. They could be playing for even bigger clubs than they are right now. So now we move to Belgium, where Samson talked to Belgium journalist Maxime Jacques about the players that are playing domestically in Belgium. And this is kind of the interview that he discussed with him.
Aanval van Agen, bal teruggelegd, Mohammadi scoort. Het is 1-1. Koeken ziet er hier niet op uit, Mohammadi.
Kajem Beesweg bij Sissako. Vindt Rezai voor zijn derde hat-trick. Geef Rezai.
Hi everyone, this is Samson Tamajani, editor of Goal Bezan. I have with me a writer for a common magazine and paper in Belgium, commonly called DH. His name is Maxime Jacques. He's a writer. You can find him at Maxime Jacques on Twitter. Maxime, thank you for making time for me once again.
Thanks to you. Happy to be here.
All right, and so I just want to immediately start off asking you about Iranian players in Belgium. Can you tell us about Charleroi, where it has 3 Iranian players at the club right now, Kaveh Rezai, 19-year-old Younes Delphi, and Ali Golizadeh. How did Charleroi do last season, and how do you think that these players performed from your observation?
Charleroi has made one of the best seasons of the history of the club. They finished at the 3rd place. That was really an amazing season. Nobody was everybody was impressed because Charleroi is a team 7 or 8 in the league the other years. But last year with this 3rd place, they were really one of the best team, one of the best football, very good pressing, but and a very important Cavarezza. He was the main striker of the team. His profile is suits very well the way the team play with a lot of pressing, a lot of runs. He's good with the head, left foot, right foot. He was really impressive. He was on loan from Bruges, and that was his 2nd season in Charleroi. He knows everybody, and he feels really like at home in Charleroi. And he showed that last year. About Ali Golizade, young player, 2nd season in Belgium, better than the 1st one. I think is one of the most technical player of the Belgian league. Very, very good, talented, gifted, left-footed, scored some beauties, and some assists also. He was really more decisive than previous year. You feel that he's growing up, and for me, it's really one of the most enjoyable player in the league. And the 3rd one is Younes Delphi. Was difficult season for him, very young. Some problem with injuries, difficult to adapt to the Belgian league. So I think that the 2nd season will be the best for him. You can take an example of Golizade. The 1st season was a bit difficult, but the 2nd season was really good.
Yeah, about Rezai, do you have any insight to why his move with Bruges didn't really work out? They loaned him back, and with Bruges only 1 goal in 11 appearances.
It didn't work out because the style of Bruges is very specific, with 3 at the back, and with a main striker, a very big one, physical, and that's not the kind of player of Rezai. He's more like a 2nd striker, but Bruges never plays with 2 strikers. So it was really difficult for him. The relationship with the coach was not as good as in Charleroi. And, Bruges is a very big club playing European games, Champions League last year. And you cannot have a bad day in Bruges. In Charleroi, you can have a bad game and then score 2 goals the next week. In Bruges, it's very difficult to be consistent, and Cavarezza was not consistent in Bruges.
Belgian 4th place finishers Antwerp announced the signing of Iran #1 Alireza Baranvan, the goalie who casual fans know stopped Ronaldo's penalty kick in the World Cup in Russia. He said a couple of years ago he always wanted to play in Europe, and 2 years later his dream comes true. Maxime, do you think he will be the first choice goalkeeper, considering they also brought another a Frenchman?
Yeah, they also brought Jean Butet from Moucron. Very good player also. He's young talent. So I think there will be a match between them to fit the position of #1. But I think Ali Reza is maybe more experienced and that could play in his favor, because Butet is a very, very talented goalkeeper, but sometimes he miss a game. But I think Baranvan will be more consistent, regular, and that could be the best. It could be the choice for Antwerp. But he came a few days ago, and Butet is there from 5 or 6 weeks. So maybe that could, at the beginning of the season, I think maybe Butet will start. But if he make a mistake, Baranvan will play also, and I think he will be maybe in 2 or 3 months the #1.
As we mentioned, this is Baranvan's first time leaving Iran in his career. We all know the goalkeeper has to have a commanding presence on the pitch for his defensive front, at least. Maxime, how difficult is it for a foreign goalkeeper who is not fluent in French or English maybe to make an impact early in his arrival for the club?
Yeah, sure. It's very difficult because communication is very important in a defensive in defense. So I think the first choice at the beginning will be Buté because he speaks French, and in Antwerp there is a lot of French-speaking players because Antwerp is in the Dutch part of Belgium, but a lot of players are speaking French. But when you have quality and when your defense feels that you are confident, the language is not that important. I think Beravant is kind of experienced goalkeeper, played World Cup. That could be an advantage for him. And well, for me, in a few weeks, he's the number one.
Mm. Now, a player who has been linked with a move to Premier League like Leeds in recent days has been Milad Mohammadi. Of course, he's currently at Ghent, who finished second in the table, I believe. How did Mohammadi do in his first season in Belgium? Do you think Ghent will want to sell him?
He was a very good surprise like last season because in Belgium nobody knows him, but he played very consistent games. He's good, very good defender, good attacker. He's a modern left back. I'm not surprised that some teams are interested in him because the games I've seen from him were very good. But I think if I was him, I would stay one more year in Ghent to play as a starter all season because last season sometimes he was in the starting 11, sometimes on the bench. He's still a young player. For me, the best choice for him would be to stay 1 year to make a really complete year, a good year, and then to make a step forward.
Iran also had another two players in Belgium who were playing on loan at Eupen, I think, Omid Ibrahimi and Said Ezzatollahi, latter of which used to be in England. So if you can you elaborate on their performances as loan players and if the team might want to keep either of them permanently?
Well, Eupen is a team is apart because a lot of players are coming, a lot of players, the mercato is always very agitated in Eupen. There is a lot of travel, players coming, players leaving. So it's hard to be to get stability in that team. But I think that Ezzatollahi and Ibrahimi played really good games last year with experience, with the focus. They were in the midfield. They were really important, to manage the game, to talk with young people. I found them really interesting. But as I said, that's kind of a strange team when there is a lot of players leaving, coming. So I'm not sure they will be in the starting 11 at the beginning of the season. But if the loan is complete, I think they will be important for the team, the main team.
Do you think it helps that they have that World Cup experience also?
Sure, there is not a lot of players in Belgium that have a World Cup experience. Some have, like Company, for example. But in a club like Eupen, that's a really, really a nice line on the curriculum vitae. And that's important. And in the dressing room, when you say, this guy has played in the World Cup, that's really important, I think, in Belgium.
He is Maxime Jacques. You can find him on Twitter at Maxime Jacques, MaximeJacques. Thank you again, sir, for coming on Goal Bezan.
Thank you.
Now, Arya, what did you think of the interview and some of the players that he discussed? And overall, what were your initial thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, first of all, we have to talk about, in my opinion, a player who's been fantastic this season for his club, Ghent, Milad Mohammadi, who, in my opinion, Milad Mohammadi is probably one of the only players in the national team of Iran who should be guaranteed a starting position. We don't have a left back outside of him, in my opinion. And he proved it. The game against Roma in the Europa League, he was brilliant. He marked Spinazzola, the right back for Roma, so well. And I think he's really shown himself to have the ability to move to a bigger club. We've seen offers from Leeds United, possibly, going to the Premier League. It's a good chance that could happen. If he played under Bielsa, it'd be fantastic for him. But I'm really impressed with him. I really am. I think that he's a guy who can develop even further, from where he's came from as well. We also saw 2 players going on loan to UPenn, Omid Ebrahimi and Said Azatollahi, who didn't play much this season, but Omid Ebrahimi was pretty much ever present for that club. He's got an assist for them as well. I think both those players are players who need continuity in their careers. Omid Ebrahimi, his career is in a bit limbo right now. He's back to Al Ahly in Qatar, and we don't know what's going on with him. Said Azatollahi's career has kind of gone downhill very, very sharp, and I think that he's doing interviews saying that he's got 2-year contract left with Rostov, which isn't true. He needs to focus on his career. He needs to focus on himself. He needs to focus on what he wants in his career. I don't know if he's doing that right now. The last point is about the guys at Charleroi. You've got Ali Ghorizadeh and Cover Rizai, who had brilliant seasons. Ali Ghorizadeh for me is a guy who has developed as a footballer. If you looked at him when he was at Saipa in Iran, he was a very selfish footballer. Coming from a futsal background, very, very technical, but not very clever. But he's become very clever. He's developed in that league in Belgium, and he's now one of the star players for his club. And Cover Rizai, 14 goals, 6 assists. It's just brilliant from him. This season he's been fantastic. And Younes Delphi as well. He didn't get any playing time, unfortunately, due to injuries. It's a shame, but I like him as a player. I really do. I like Younes Delphi, and I hope that he can get some playing time. But last point about Bayern Vand. Of course, it was suggested by Maxime that he could be benched for the next few weeks at least. So we'll see what happens. He'll need to develop. He'll need to show himself in that league. He need to show that he can be the player he was at Persepolis or for Team Melli at the World Cup. So I hope that he does that.
I think Arya summarized my opinions as well, really good. And I'm just happy that Belgium is a good stepping stone for Iranian players to learn the European kind of football and mentality. And that's one of the best leagues to do it in my opinion. So, yeah.
So now we move finally to Turkey, where Arya talks to Burcu Eken, Turkish journalist, about the 2 domestic Iranian players that are playing over in Turkey.
And Fenerbahce hit back. They sure can. It's a new signing who scored here for Fenerbahce. Good play down the right. Alayat Sayed Manesh, the Iranian.
Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm joined by Burcu Eken. I'm really pleased to have you on. How are you doing?
Hello, Arya.
Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate your time. Obviously, we're here to speak about the Turkish league. We've got 2 players playing in that league, Majid Hosseini and Sayed Manesh. But first of all, I want to ask you about Trabzonspor this season. How do you think they did?
Trabzonspor has performed more successfully than this season for a long time. The team was in the first 2 places in the last 2010-2011 season. They managed to do this season and won the Turkey Cup. Turkey Cup is very important because here a great success for the Trabzonspor because the MAG was last vote in 2010. The economic measures implemented by the new management and the extra performance of the football players, take them to the top.
Yeah, definitely. I think they invested a lot of money in the club. So, but now Trabzonspor, because of that, Trabzonspor have now been banned from European competitions. So, what's your thoughts regarding that?
Yeah. This was an unaccepted decisions for the Trabzonspor. They had to pay for the mistake of past administrations. But as Burcu Eken, I said in the UEFA December report that there might be sensation, but nobody believed me. So in this respect, it was an expected result. UEFA warning have to be taken into account, but this is not good for Trabzonspor and Trabzonspor fans and players, because everybody believe going to the Champions League, but now everybody going to other teams.
Absolutely. Burcu, just before we move on, I want to just ask you quickly if you can give us your social media, where the people who are listening can find you.
My social media?
Twitter, Instagram.
Yeah. All the social media, same, at Burcu Eken TV.
Excellent. Brilliant. So, okay, so the next question, obviously people who are listening will be really excited to hear, is about Majid Hosseini. People want to know how he done this season in your view.
Majid was behind the first season. He was one of the key players of the team last year, but lost it. Especially, he pulled his own rope with the red card. He saw amateur. However,
Amateurly, yeah, for sure.
Amateurly, yeah. However, he is still a worthy player. If he takes care of himself and develops, he can play in the top 11 again. But now, very difficult.
And they have, I think they have Kampi, Hussein Turkman, and De Costa. So it's difficult for him to get into the starting line. There's a lot of competition in that club. So what is the view of the fans on Majid Hosseini?
As you know, Majid had a very good World Cup. His performance there was important, and he came to the Trabzonspor. Trabzonspor gained an important name. When the fans first arrived, Majid Hussein, nobody didn't know nothing. For this reason, almost nobody had a clever view. Despite the tournament, it was almost a closed box. Your reaction to each scenario can be deceived. During his first season, Majid was loud and expected to the best teams in Europe. However, no one is pleased with this season performance.
Yeah, I mean he played quite well last season. And, obviously he was playing in the World Cup with Iran. And this season, I think he maybe took a step backwards in his career. I would be. What is his future at the club, though? Do you think he'll leave? And if he does leave, what's the impact of him leaving?
As you know, Majid is in the last year of the contract. The option was used and the contract was extended for another 1 year. Management is happy to work with him, but can sell if a good offer comes. However, it is a professional with high expectations. They accepted to €2 million offer from Sampdoria. We will see if there is another suggestion. Maybe he will going to there, but maybe he will come to Turkey.
Maybe he'll go back to. I don't think he'll go back to Iran, but he could go to maybe a team in Italy.
Yeah, maybe.
The other player, of course, in Turkey that we have, who's been playing very well for Iran from youth international level. He moved to Fenerbahce last season. Is of course Arya Sayed, who didn't really play this season. He was on loan at Istanbulspor. He even scored 1 goal for them at the start of the season, but then he came back to Fenerbahce. What do you think are his plans, or Fenerbahce's plans, for Arya Sayed for next season?
As far as I have learned, Emre Belezoğlu, he's a new sport director of Fenerbahce, had a meeting with Allahverdi. He told him that he would continue in the new season with the Fenerbahce. As you know, Allahverdi played before the season opposite the Çaykur Rizespor in the last game. Because Vedat Muric has suspended for a red card. The football club, Fenerbahce, he was happy about the Allahverdi. They are taught next season with the Allahverdi, and thought are good against with him.
So from what I gather, I guess that last game of the season against Rivas, that was a good performance from him, and then they want to keep him for next season.
Yes, because he's very young.
Yeah.
So Emre Belezoğlu wants to be going with him. Sorry, and maybe Fenerbahce fans will be. Believe him now, because he is very young. He doesn't play very much in Fenerbahce and Istanbulspor. Actually, the Istanbulspor period wasn't very good for Allahverdi. But I think, this is my opinion, here the real problem may be in Istanbulspor, because they are one league down, play TFF First League, and they coach and Istanbulspor team very different for the Allahverdi, because in Turkey Super League and First League very different. If you wanna play Super League, you must be not hard work for Super League. But if you wanna play in TFF First League, you must be hard, very, very hard. So very different mentality, coach, management, president, and football player, very, very different. So I think, I believe him, and the next season he will show himself in the next season in Fenerbahce, I believe.
Yeah, I hope so, because he's a player who in Iran is very highly rated, young player who's always been very talented at maybe like 16, 17 years old. Yes. Iranian fans were expecting a lot from him. So hopefully he does play more next season for Fenerbahce. But Burcu, I really appreciate you coming on, taking your time to do this interview with us, and hopefully we can speak to you soon later on, maybe next season after the season finishes. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Maybe we will see in my social media and in my program in the radio. And maybe, why not?
Oh, thank you very much. That's very nice of you.
Okay.
Now, Arya, what did you think about the interview? What were your initial thoughts? What are your talking points from it?
Yeah, no, it was an interesting interview. She really gave us a lot of in-depth analysis on Majid Hosseini's career this season, how it's come from. He started out quite well, and he kind of he didn't show a lot this season in terms of the kind of same what we expect from him. You know, when he came from SDN, he was very, very talented, very, very sought for centre back. You know, obviously doing so well in the World Cup, but he didn't show that he can progress in this league, in this club, and I think that's an issue for him. I think it's become an issue for him over the last 6 to 7 months, that he's not played a lot of games. He hasn't started a lot of games, and he needs, in my opinion, either to move on from Turkey, like overall, just move from Turkey, or find a club in Turkey, maybe it's like a club lower down in the table, that will guarantee him playing time, because he cannot afford to become a Ezatolahi, where he doesn't get playing time and he gets loaned out. He has to go to a team where he's going to get guaranteed game time, because at this stage in his career, he needs that. But yeah, no, I'm a huge fan of Majid Hosseini. I think he's a brilliant player, but I do 100%, I don't put a blind side to what he's done this season, and he hasn't been the same player. So yeah.
So now, quick little intermission break. Guys, if you're not following Goal Bezan on Twitter and Instagram, make sure you do so. And if you're listening to us on whatever preferred podcast platform you are, we're also available on the Apple Podcast app, Spotify, Google Play Music, and now on YouTube. So you got to go subscribe to us on YouTube. So make sure to do that. Now we'll go back to talking about that interview. Pejman, do you have anything else you'd like to add on to what Arya discussed from that interview in Turkey?
Yeah. Well, once again, I agree with Arya, what he said about Majid getting playing time, but I don't agree with him moving to another Turkish club. I think he will get, lost from the big stage. At this moment, he's been getting less playtime, and when he finally got some good playtime, he managed to get like a red card, which is very unusual for him. So I think that, playing in let's say Trabzonspor is a big club, at least a successful club. Playing in a successful club that won the Turkish league, that fought until the very end for winning the league itself, you will have a lot of tough competition, and that competition is really good for him to develop. And yes, I do agree that he needs to, he's still very young, but he needs to think what he wants to do the next season, because if he will continue to be on the bench and play like every 5th or 6th game, he might very well lose his position in the national team as well. That wasn't even really guaranteed at the end with Carlos Queiroz. So I hope he'll stay in Trabzonspor. If he will move, then he should leave Turkey for good, or at least go to other big clubs, but he won't be safe for certain to get a playing time there as well. So he's in a tricky position and needs to show himself to earn that spot.
I think one of the things obviously that's come up recently has been his link to Sampdoria in the Serie A, which is a good club. We know Sampdoria is a good club. They've always been successful in the Serie A. They didn't have a good season, but they will develop. They're always a club who looks to develop and bring in young players. They've had players like Romagnoli who've developed as a centre back. I think it was Joachim Andersen last season who came in and he was fantastic, and he moved to Lyon, another centre back. So they can develop players. Whether or not he goes there, I don't know, but we'll see what happens. His career is interesting one to look at. Last point was on Alayor Sayad Manesh. We discussed it with Burcu as well. Pretty basic. I think he will stay at Fenerbahce for one more season, and I hope that he does get some more playing time this season.
So the final player we want to discuss, and the final piece of this podcast episode, is we want to talk about Ghoddos, who plays for Amiens. Pejman has been following his career very closely, as we've listened to in previous podcasts, and we kind of want to discuss what is going to happen with him at Amiens, as they just recently got relegated in Ligue 1. Now he's playing in the 2nd division. Will it be a good idea for him to stay, leave? What's going to happen with him? There's a big balloon in the air. with Ghoddos. We all want him to be successful. And Pezhman's going to be kind of here to discuss that. What do we think is going to happen with Ghoddos in his career right now during the transfer window?
Well, to understand what will happen, we have to look back and see what has happened. And I believe that he probably got his worst season as a football player ever, at least at this level. You know, he got this ban from FIFA of around 4 months because he had these issues about him. He was signing with Spanish League Huesca or not, and FIFA overruled that and made sure that not only did he was he suspended for 4 months, he also got a really big fine, or if I'm not mistaken, 4 million euros or something like that. And you know, that kind of pressure and that loss, against FIFA is a really big blow for a player that probably was in one of his most important years as a football player. You know, he's not 20 anymore. He's 26, 27 now. He needs to show himself at the big stage. And when he will return, it didn't take a long time until he got injured. So, you know, you got the ban, you got the 4 million euros that you have to pay or not. You know, I think that's still up to the last word haven't yet been said. He came back, he was injured. And then the coronavirus came and, you know, he more or less lost his place in the national team. He is at, I think right now, he is not where he wants to be. He didn't move to Amiens as one of their most expensive players to play in League 2, sorry. But of course, Amiens didn't expect to get relegated. And that's something, also another point here, that at first they weren't supposed to get relegated because the league actually wasn't finished. But then that got overruled and they got relegated. And at the moment, he's still in Amiens and he's playing in the second league. Although he scored his first goal for that for the club now in that league, I know that he is interested to move to another league, or at least this is not where he wants to be in his career. Although he acts very professional, he says, outside that he wants to do his best and he wants to show himself, and that's understandable because last season was, to be honest, as I said, a horrible season for him in all kind of ways. So to be able to move from France or to Ligue 1 or somewhere else, he needs to have a good season here until the next window. And if not, then he will stay there. And his spot in the national team will still be, 50-50 in my opinion. If we have Saman Ghoddos that is in good shape, both physically and mentally, he will outshine that league for sure because he's that good and he have all those necessary tools to become a star in that league. And I think that he will do that if he can, don't have any injuries, and hopefully we will see him in a better league or in a better club and back to the national team, because I think that he belongs there. Now we just have to prove it once more.
Exactly. We just want to look for the best for Ghoddos, and I think Pezhman says it completely best, and hopefully we see his career progress because we know he has a lot of potential and he's a very successful, has a good mindset when it comes to when he plays on the pitch, on and off the pitch. And so hopefully we see good things happen for him. So that's the end of the podcast, guys. We hope you enjoyed it. There will be a part 2 where we discuss other players that are playing in other domestic leagues with other journalists that our awesome team has talked to. And we hope you guys enjoyed it. As I said in the middle of the podcast, make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at @GoldBezan. And then to subscribe to us and listen to us on all the platforms possible, especially YouTube, because we're trying to make that platform grow, and YouTube is a dope place to listen to our podcasts on. So make sure you go check us out on YouTube as well.
Hey, this is Arash Markazi from ESPN, and you're listening to Gol Bezan, your one-stop shop for all your Iranian soccer news.